Hello and welcome back to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Andy Green.
Felix Schultz, that is me.
It is you, Felix. How you going?
Yeah, pretty good. It's lovely weather. We're recording this. I don't know if we're going to break the fourth wall or anything here, but we're recording it on Easter Sunday.
I know.
The time of egg gathering and resurrection, I suppose. So yeah, it's a nice day. It's lovely weather.
It's peak Melbourne, I think, these last 2 days.
Autumn. Autumn's what's your favourite season, Andy?
I'm a spring guy, but if autumn stays like this, then I'll be switching seasons. What about you?
Yeah, again, spring and autumn are pretty close, but I get sort of allergies, so maybe autumn, slight edge.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, we have a guest. We didn't ask them or what their favourite season was, but I suspect
it's irrelevant.
I feel he's a spring. Michael Sulbar, he was in New York when we spoke to him. He lives in New York. He's a New York native. He's directed a movie called The Keeper of Time, which is quite incredible, to be honest. It's a documentary film on independent watchmaking, essentially. But more than that, what time means.
Now, it was a really good sort of 90 minutes, and it's going to be premiering, I think.
Now, if you're listening
to this. So if you can make the premiere, either the live stream or in person in New York City, definitely do. Otherwise, you don't want to miss it, and grab a Vimeo link.
So we talk about it in the episode, but it doesn't hurt to mention it now. So if you get the streaming ones now, like don't just get the Vimeo, you can also see there's a Q&A afterwards with essentially the who's who of the watch world, like Ben Clymer and John Reardon, I think, and Friedman from AP. So a bunch of big names. So that'll be fascinating. So yeah, I would not recommend missing it. But before that, Andy, something else significant has happened.
What's been happening?
I've been seeing Instagrams of a particular watch that's made its way out into the world.
It's very exciting, isn't it?
It is. It's the watch I'm wearing on my wrist. It's the Anodyne Model 2 OT edition with a pink dial.
Stunning.
Now, I haven't seen any of the off-whites yet, but I suspect they're not far away. How does it feel when you're seeing random people that you don't really know, like tagging you in posts?
It feels good, Felix. I mean, and not only that, I'm getting messages from people. Oh, yeah, my friend who is a massive collector, low-key, doesn't post stuff. He got it. He's over the moon.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting nice messages, and it's cool to see sort of where these limited pieces end up. There was only sort of 60 in total, so it's sort of very cool to see, and nice to sort of see people enjoying the finished product.
And I was chatting to someone, and he said he's got a mate that's already got dibs on it. So that's something that this is another thing. How will you feel about this being resold?
That did cross my mind. I'm really curious to see who flips theirs first and what it goes for. I'm indifferent.
Does it bother you, or you're like, oh, I want to get a great price because that gives us credibility? Like, is there any of that sort of going on?
It doesn't really impact us at all, does it?
No, the watch has been sold.
It's been sold.
Yeah,
we've helps drive up, I guess, the Anodyne brand, which is fantastic because we love those guys. But
and that's the other thing. I think so. We normally publish this on a Friday morning. I think this is a slight embargo break, but I'm pretty okay doing it later today. So I think probably middle of the night Australia time. I think we're getting the next generation of the Model 2, so the Model 2 Mark II. So that's what ours is kind of like a Mark 1.5. in some ways, but this is the regular production Anodyne Model 2 with a larger case and some other cool details. So check out their feeds and their site to see the details. And I'm not sure how they're doing sales at the moment, but put your name down or buy it if you can because it's an exceptional watch.
Yep, totally agree. Well, it's very cool to see. It is absolutely awesome to see. You know what else is cool to see?
What?
William Wood. So we had Johnny Garrett, the founder of William Wood Watches, on maybe last month before.
Again, an incredibly nice person. I'd like to say that the entire watch industry is full of incredibly nice people. Maybe that's the ones that we want to speak to.
He's up there, top tier.
Yeah.
So he mentioned the sort of the motorcycle Saltier kind of collab that they had, 300 tickets, 175 Aussie bucks, and you could kind of register and then have a 1 in 300 chance of winning this fully customized motorcycle.
Yeah, that's a pretty good odd.
It looks really, really cool. Yeah, they're great odds, and it's, normal people do 1,000 or 3,000 or something can make it the tickets. But I think they found a good price point. So £100. So that is happening now, I believe, Felix.
Look, to be honest, we'll have posted some stuff on our ground, suggesting people do it. But I reckon they're probably all gone by now. But if not, there might be a few stragglers. They sort of announced it a couple of days ago. Head to williamwoodwatches.com/collection/always-ready-motorbike. We'll link it up in the show notes. A natch.
No, you will be able to. I'm just looking at the little terms and conditions. 20th of April until the 3rd of May, midnight on the 3rd of May. You can get your Always Ready prize draw ticket.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not many tickets, mate. I reckon.
300. I think they're going to go quickly, to be honest. Yeah, so if you're listening now, hop on, have a look, get one if you can.
And the other thing,
they'll ship anywhere in the world, right?
And they'll also teach you how to drive it. Drive? Again, clearly I need to be taught how to ride it because I don't know how to ride a motorbike. You don't drive motorbikes. Yeah, it's cool. So check it out, and we'll
Oh, and of course, great cause, charity.
Yes.
So fantastic, like everything William would do, really. What else? Oh, so you might have seen some of my photographs on Hodinkee last week.
I did, but then I noticed it was someone called Andrew.
Yeah, who is this?
It couldn't possibly be you.
Yeah, bit of a truth bomb, Felix. My name is actually Andrew.
How do you feel about Andrew? Does anyone call you Andrew?
Figured my mum does when she's angry with me.
Really?
The spatula's coming out. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. Calling your mum out on the podcast.
Yeah.
Wow, Andrew. That's
triggered.
Doesn't work.
But it was used for an article called Lust for the Mast by Liz Stinson, who's a Hodinkee contributor. Really
good
nice
headline.
Yeah, it's a cracking headline. Really interesting, kind of more design take on the must and sort of the history of it a little bit. I'm guessing not too many people had photos of all of the 3 colours that were released last year, being the red, green, and blue must.
They probably they wouldn't have done a show. Did they do a show in Geneva anyway, or
no? And I think they just kind of all got sold out and allocated really quickly, and
you happened to make the press showing in a timely fashion.
Right place, right time.
Yeah, nice. Hey, speaking about right place, right time.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about this week's sponsor.
Breitling.
Yes. So we've been on a flight for the last few weeks with Breitling and their CEO, Journe. He took off the Navitimer Express.
Yes, he did.
Which had their 70th anniversary a little while ago. And they did it not by releasing like a single, retro limited edition. They gave a complete line makeover. And we have been talking about this a fair bit in the Discord. So there's quite a few pilots and, av geeks in our Discord. They all seem to be pretty pro the new Navi, which I think is a far more credible take than anything you or I could necessarily give from the aviation point of view.
Yeah, I mean, there's actual pilots, Air Force personnel in there.
Yeah. So what's the top line story on these new watches, Andy?
Yeah, of course. Well, we should mention we did have Journe on a couple of weeks ago as well. So if you want a bit of more in detail chat and insight, insight into the new Navitimer, you can go back and catch that episode if you haven't. But if you don't have time to do that now, here's the top line, Felix, is that the new Navitimer comes in a 41, 43 or 46 millimeter case and is available on a bracelet or a strap with quite a big range of dials, I must say.
Yeah, 13 dials all up, and there's some. I mean, really, this is where there's a lot of interesting changes. They've sort of simplified the slide rule a little bit. They've made some contemporary updates, and they've added some really lovely colours. Do you have any particular favourite, Andy?
Every week I sort of see it ping up in the Discord, and it sort of changes between the minty green, or the ice blue with the black subdials. What about you?
Look, I've stayed pretty loyal to the old coppery salmon colour, but again, there's those 2 pandas, or 3. There's like a silvery version and there's the inverse, which are classic. They're like classic aviation chronograph style. The other thing that's really, really worth mentioning is that everything is now powered by the B01 caliber.
Yeah, jet fuel.
I mean, yeah, it's such a great movement. And the pricing on these, it's around sort of, it's a caliber bump, so around 12K Aussie, a little bit more for the bracelet, different sizes, obviously solid gold options, bit more than 12. So,
A little bit more than 12 in the size, Felix. Which one are you opting for?
Well, I went into the meeting and I sort of knew what was coming. I was going to go 41, 41, 41. Yep. I walked out of it going 43, and even the 46 doesn't look too big on my masculine wrist.
Significantly masculine wrist. Yeah, I was the same. I was thinking 41. I don't really wear my 41 millimeter watches anymore. I find them a little bit too big. But that's sort of really the upper echelon of millimeters for me. And then I actually prefer the 43 because it's such a short lugs, mostly dial, really slim watch. I'm guessing that's thanks in part to the new caliber as well.
And there's enough going on in the dial so that it doesn't feel OTT at all. So I think what you should do, ideally check them out in person. That's a really great, try them on, the sizing especially. But you can even you can do some virtual stuff at Breitling.com, including buy them, Andy. You can buy them online, which is handy these days.
Breitling.com, like we said, let's crack on. Let's get Michael Culyba on the line, and let's hear about his new film, his new documentary, Keeper of Time.
Bring. Andy, we're all familiar with the phenomena of watch spotting on film, and somehow I don't think this is going to be a problem in the new documentary film, Keeper of Time, which, to quote the press release, explores the astonishing and beautiful world of mechanical watchmaking while contemplating the theoretical and philosophical notions of time, aging, and mortality. That's an incredible achievement, and today our guest is director Michael Culyba.
Welcome, Michael. How are you going today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, our pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, beyond the press release, which Felix and I have read, what is Keeper of Time about?
Well, it's essentially that's what it's about. But the film all started with my fascination with mechanical watchmaking, mechanical timekeepers. About 4 years ago, I wanted to buy myself a nice watch for my birthday. Frankly, nobody else was going to do it. But I didn't know what a mechanical watch was. I didn't know there was a difference between a mechanical watch and a battery-powered quartz watch. Gary Steingart in the film had a similar experience. He just thought everything ran on a battery. And that's where I was as well. And so once I learned that nicer watches were mechanical in nature, I was just blown away. I could not believe these little micro engineering devices ran on springs, and it was just watching the balance go back and forth. Videos, books, I just sort of dove in head first. And at the same time, I was looking to make a documentary film. And had been just trying to find the subject matter that I was willing to put in the years, time, energy, money, and passion behind. And when I discovered mechanical watches, I was like, this is the film I want to make.
It's really interesting that you say that because, I watched the film last night, and the documentary is more about timekeeping. Is less about watches and timekeeping as it is about the concept and notion of time in different ways. You just said you started out with, watches as sort of the idea for the project, and it kind of feels like it's not with the finished product. Is that what you always wanted to achieve, or was that sort of something that sort of gradually happened?
Well, like I said, it did start with the watches. And, but, looking down at your wrist and watching the second hand go by, the next question I had was, what exactly are these devices measuring? What is time? And at that point, I thought the film could have a deeper theme to it, which is an exploration into more of a philosophical notion of what time is, how we experience time as human beings, how we experience our own mortality, and life on this planet. And these are like the deeper themes and ideas that I always find interesting in cinema. And so to be able to fold those ideas into a film about, independent watchmaking, that really excited me.
Absolutely. And I think it's a fascinating sort of documentary for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. And I think one thing that really stands out to me is that for someone that, as you said, sort of worked out that watches, didn't run on batteries a few years ago, you've gone in at the deep end. You've got extensive film time with some of, watchmaking's greats like Philippe Dufour, Roger Smith. What was that like to go from sort of like 0 to 100 in such a short amount of time?
That's exactly what it was. In a blink of an eye, I went from not knowing the difference between a mechanical watch and a quartz watch to interviewing François-Paul Journe in the span of like 6 or 7 months. It was thrilling. What can I say? I mean, how it happened was the first interview I did was with, Nicholas Manousis at the who is the executive director of the Horological Society of New York. And he was just really supportive of the project from day one, got behind me and the film, and, said, let me reach out to François-Paul Journe and see if he'd be interested in participating. And lo and behold, he was. And it was just thrilling, quite frankly, I was so green and still learning that I probably wasn't completely qualified to be interviewing François-Paul Journe at the time, but it worked out. And, I did all my research and we had a very good interview. I ended up interviewing him again in Geneva. But it was thrilling. And then, from there, once he was on board, others followed suit. I think Max Büsser, I approached him and he was totally into it as well. And he came on board. So, it was exciting. And what had happened is I did a Kickstarter. So I started filming. I started filming on my own dime, essentially. That included François-Paul Journe. And then I needed money to go to Europe and the rest of the world to film everybody else and the watch manufacturers and all of that. And so what was great about the Kickstarter was it was very successful. It funded all the filming. Also, what was great about it is it sort of exposed the film to the rest of the world. And John Reardon came on as an executive producer at the time.
Yep.
And Eric Koo. And they not only contributed financially, but they were like really supportive and helped me. Like, for instance, Eric Koo was the one that introduced me to Philippe Dufour. Yeah. And so, which, I mean,
you kind of need
talk about a special day.
Yeah, you kind of need the weight of someone's recommendation. You can't just, well, maybe you can rock up to Mr. Dufour's industry, building and have a chat with him, but probably not.
I find him to be very elusive. He's a wonderful man, though, and it was probably the most memorable day of shooting for me because by the time we filmed with Philippe Dufour, I was way more knowledgeable. I understood I was in the presence of, the widely considered the greatest living watchmaker. And he was so welcoming and forthcoming. He just wanted to show us everything. Took us around his workshop. He volunteered to, sit at his bench and polish a screw sink with his ebony wood and bow, and also polish some beveling on. It was just an incredible experience.
Hey, Andy, we're just going to take a quick break for a second to have a little chat about show sponsors, long-running show sponsors now, Artem Straps. We love them. You know about it. You know why we love them. They make some top-notch sailcloth straps, and they're getting into the NATO game as well. They've got a range of very, very top-notch NATO straps. They're thick. They're sort of got a little satiny sheen. They're not too glossy. The hardware is, correct. 20 millimeters at the moment in a range of patterns. Your classic sort of bond stripes, colored stripes, and the one I've been rocking at the moment is solid black with a center orange stripe.
Oh, nice, bit of a bolder look.
Bolder look. I reckon there might be. It is on black dialed pilot watch at the moment, so can't go wrong. But I reckon there might be some more coming down the line, in the near future. So stay tuned.
Get them up.
Artemstraps.com. We love them. You love them.
And also, we should mention their accessory range as well. Like, they're growing as they're a young business, but different tangs, buckles, deployment clasps. They've got a huge range of spring bars. I've mentioned them before. Different sizes. They sell 4-packs for really, fine pricing. Like, who cares if it's quality? It's quality. It's holding your lovely Artem strap onto your expensive luxury watch. They've got quick release options, fat, curves, heavy duty, and of course, a handy spring bar tool as well. So it's really becoming a bit of a one-shop stop for accessories. And as you said, Felix, Artem support the show, so support people that support our show.
Nice. Yeah, good plug on the straps, Andy. Can't go wrong with them. But let's get back to Michael.
Amazing. And what I found really interesting, sort of, you talk to these industry leaders, Dufour, Büsser, just to name a few really, really serious players, François-Paul, Journe as well, and sort of these guys that have incredible demand for their product. Dufour, Roger Smith, they're making 10 watches a year or something like that, that sell for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars new, and then resell for probably double or triple that. And firstly, I really like the innocence and the accessibility of the lines of questions, because one thing that kept coming back to me was, like, these guys they don't care about accurate timekeeping. Like, it's important to them and it's something that they're proud of, but they don't view watches at all as a kind of technical instrument anymore. It's not about buying a watch that's going to be the most accurate or doing anything that's that's crazy impressive on that front. It's really something more of a talisman, as Ben Clymer put it. And I think that sort of became a bit of a pattern throughout the documentary. As I sort of watched it, I was like, oh, well, this is really interesting to see all of these guys sort of saying the same thing. And not only that, why don't they make 20 watches a year? Why doesn't Roger Smith make 30 watches a year? And it's sort of a reflection of how they want to spend their own time and their own resources and their limited sort of, time on the planet. Was that something that kind of came across to you as the kind of story developed?
Yeah, that theme that you just mentioned, how we spend our time with the finite lives that we have, was really important to me. And I think that's what I want people to come away with ultimately from watching the film. But yes, I found that quality in all of the watchmakers. They have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of this artisanal, historic craft to make these beautiful objects to share with the world. And there's a part in the film with Adrian Bejan, who is a distinguished professor at Duke University, who talks about why we perceive time speeding up as we age. It's more philosophical theme, obviously. And at the end, the takeaway from that is, the more interesting life that you live, you perceive living a longer life. Not only that, but you live a happier life. And I just thought that was a wonderful message. And so, yes, in these watchmakers, they're living really interesting lives. They're doing interesting things, making these beautiful objects, and they're contributing something beautiful to the world. And so, yeah, I mean, that I found that, really inspiring with all of the watchmakers.
Yeah. And maybe not a direction I was expecting the film to go when I hit play, but I was, it left me, I think, better than when I started it, which isn't necessarily something you can say about every piece of cinema. Michael, you've been a professional, editor and working in the movie industry, I suppose, for a long time. But this is your first sort of step into the director's chair. What made you want to do that? You mentioned before that you came across watches as a topic to do, but you were already looking for a project. Why did you want to sort of make that leap yourself?
Well, from a very young age, I always was interested in filmmaking. I mean, a very young age, like age 7, and so I always made my own films as a young kid and through high school and college, and I went to film school, and so it was always about making my own films, and then to make a living. I fell into the documentary world as an editor, which I really enjoy. It's where the story is crafted out of the raw footage, and I really enjoy it. And I plan on continuing doing that. I edited this film, but yeah, the want and the need to make my own films has always been there. And like I said, I just was like, it took me 4 years to make this film, and independently, and that's what it takes to make a documentary film or any film. And so I just you need that passion for the subject matter. And if you don't have that, it's you can't do it half-heartedly. You really have to put everything you have into it. And like, when I discovered these watches, and I was so enthusiastic about it. I was just, and I couldn't believe nobody else had made a feature documentary about independent watchmaking that, like this, where it folded in, the concept of time and, our lives and the history of horology and timekeeping. I just couldn't believe it really didn't exist. And that was just even more motivation.
4 years is a long time, but it's paid off in my humble opinion. What do you hope people learn from watching this film, Michael? What's the kind of key takeaway for someone who's not even into watches but stumbles across it and, gets suggested to them on Netflix or something? What do you hope they take away?
Well, I made the film because I was so enthusiastic and about mechanical timekeeping, and the whole film was an adventure and journey and my learning experience about mechanical timekeeping and watches. And so I really wanted, part of the reason I wanted to make the film as well is because I was 44 at the time, and I couldn't believe that this world existed, and I had no idea about it. I just couldn't believe it. Like, where has this been my whole life? What? And so I was like, if I didn't know about this, there must be millions of people out there that are in the dark too. And so part of the motivation of making the film was to expose people to this wonderful world of mechanical timekeeping and horology and watchmaking. So I wanted to craft a film that was for people that had no idea about this world, that would come away and hopefully become as passionate as I am about it. But I also wanted to make a film for the seasoned watch enthusiast who will get a kick out of, seeing all these wonderful watchmakers and learn something themselves about maybe this longitude dial that William Andrews makes, or just about these concepts of time. And, so that's really was sort of my goal. But, again, I want, it would be great if people were sort of emotionally moved by the film too. And, come away with that, I think listen, it may seem trite that, we should be living our days like it's the last day of our life and seizing the day. But I do think we all need to be reminded of that life is finite and we should be living lives that are meaningful, and making things that are beautiful and sharing them with the world. And so I would like people to reflect on their own lives and ask themselves, am I living the life that I dreamt for myself?
Yeah, this is you're right. We were talking about this just before we started recording, about the links between sort of watchmaking and philosophy, and this is very much taking me back to undergrad, old Greek guys talking about what is a life well lived. You mentioned something before, and it's been sitting with me about why no one else has sort of told this story on film on this scale before. And you're obviously the first, and it's, I think, a really, really great story to tell, obviously. But why do you think no one has ever sort of done it before? I mean, certainly there's, money and interest and, human interest there.
Maybe because it was so damn hard. I mean, it was a lot of work. I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that question. I don't know why nobody has tackled this subject matter for a feature documentary. There's been some wonderful short films made.
Maybe they didn't have
but
time.
But I don't know why nobody else has done it.
Yeah.
It was complicated. Listen, one of the biggest challenges of making the film was weaving in the philosophical themes with the watchmaker profiles, with the history of timekeeping, essentially from the dawn of mankind, and weaving that all together in the editing room. I mean, it was extremely challenging, but I think I pulled it off, and it's a better film for it.
And you're exactly, obviously you're right. It's your film. You know what you're talking about. But I was very impressed when I watched it, like as someone that sort of watched things like this before. They do tend to focus on the small and the minute. Like, it's easy if you've got someone like, FP Journe at a watchmaking desk to just show that. But you did a really, really great job showing time on a larger scale and talking about time in a big way as well as a small way. And I don't really have a question here, but I just find that not something I've seen before. Even, those beautiful shots of sort of Neolithic timekeeping devices and stuff like that. It was, it made it a better story.
I think so. I think, if it was just a film about the watchmakers, I think that'd be interesting. I mean, they're all very interesting. They have very interesting stories. They make incredible watches. They're beautiful. They're cinematic, all of them. But the film needed that extra layer of depth and meaning. Otherwise, I think it would have just been a good series of short films. But this kind of ties it together, I think, and makes it this unified film with deep meaning. Yeah.
One of the things I really liked about it is that it wasn't too watchy. Like when you did have watchmakers explaining how certain things work, it was done in a very accessible way, and it was not dumbed down, but it was just educational and
accessible. Yeah,
accessible, but eloquently put from all of these really intricate and interesting industry figures. And I think that is the real sort of beauty of the film, of how, to make a simplicity pun, how simple it was to kind of grasp the concepts that you were putting forward. So that's, really well done on that. But what I want to ask you is, so 2018 was when this process started. That was sort of what I think is a real turning point in the watch industry for hype. It was sort of 2018, 2019, watches went absolutely crazy. Hype, FP Journe at the start of this back in 2018 wasn't anywhere near as desirable as, he is in 2022 in terms of that resale hype, not in terms of his product. Did that change anything for you as you kind of were getting through the process, this sort of crazy hype that just exploded on the scene with all of these brands and people that you're talking to in an industry that you're talking to?
Well, I do think I was lucky to start the film when I did, because maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I wouldn't have access to some of the watchmakers, because you're right. The hype has just, really spiraled and snowballed. I mean, for example, like I said, I bought myself a nice watch for my birthday. I ended up getting a Tudor, but at the time, I went in thinking I was going to get a Rolex. I walked into a jewelry store. They had every Rolex steel sports model that existed. I could have gotten a Rolex Submariner Hulk or Kermit, whatever it's called, with the green bezel, and for retail, I think it was like $8,000. Those days are over. But anyways, I do think I was lucky, and but it didn't really affect me. I think, listen, regardless, these watches that Dufour and François-Paul and Max Büsser and Roger Smith, these watches are unattainable for me. I mean, I'm not a high roller by any means. I couldn't even dream of affording one of these timepieces, But I think, I think you can appreciate the beauty of these and the technical merit of these and the craft and the man hours that goes into making one of these beautiful objects without necessarily being able to own one. I mean, I always like to compare it to, and I'm not the first one to make this analogy, but, a work of art, like I can't afford a Basquiat either, but I can go to a museum and, really appreciate it and enjoy it. I feel the same way about these timepieces, and I think listen, I was lucky enough to handle them and see them in person, which was also another thrill. It's like, to film François-Paul Journe's Grand Sonnery, that doesn't even being manufactured anymore. I mean, that I think at the time was retailing for over $500,000, and the value of that now is sure well beyond that, obviously. But just to film the watches was exciting for me. It was a real thrill.
Yeah, I mean, we have Dufour's first ever watch movement. It's crazy.
Yeah, his student. Not his watch, his school watch that he made, and then the first movement that he made, which was amazing, which is his Grand Sonnery movement. It's just like he pulled that out. I was like, what? Like, woof. And then the first Simplicity that he ever made, 000. It was just amazing.
And were there any? Obviously, it's sort of for someone that loves watches, I can imagine filming that would have been a moment of sort of, a series of pinch yourself moments. Were there any particular encounters or, sort of discussions or, things you were filming, like you've just spoken about, where you weren't expecting to sort of impact you quite how they did?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is when I interviewed Roger Smith, again, kind of on purpose. I didn't really research his story. I mean, I was familiar with him. I knew he was a disciple of George Daniels. I knew who George Daniels was, and I knew the kind of watches that the coaxial escapement. I knew but I didn't really know his backstory, the details of that. So when I sat down with him for the interview, and he told his story about meeting George Daniels when he was a young person, and deciding that he was going to be a watchmaker, and then asking George Daniels for an apprenticeship. And George Daniels says, if you want an apprenticeship, go make a watch. And then, Roger Smith going back, living it with his parents, by the way, at the time, and making a watch, spending a year and making a watch from complete scratch. Then going back to George Daniels, presenting the watch, and George Daniels saying, "This is terrible. It's awful. What is this? This doesn't work." I don't know, but go back and make another watch. And rather than putting his tail between his legs and sort of pouting and quitting, Roger Smith goes back again. I believe he was at his parents' house and spent the next 5.5 years making another watch. In fact, he made the watch 4 times over, because every time he made a part, by the time he finished the watch, he realized that the parts that he last made were better than the first parts that he made a year prior. And so he just made it over. He made it 4 times over until he literally could not improve the watch anymore. So he goes back to George Daniels with this new watch and presents it to George Daniels, and George Daniels says, "Congratulations, you're a watchmaker," and invites him to apprentice at his workshop on the Isle of Man. Now, excuse me. Now, I can't, that story blew me away. I mean, to spend the 6-7 years to build a watch, 2 watches from scratch. I mean, all in the hopes of getting an apprenticeship with George Daniels is mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the apprenticeship he did with George Daniels was 3.5 years long before Roger Smith felt that he could make his own watches and create his own brand. So you're talking like 10 years of just committing your life to that dedication. I just doesn't, you don't, even Roger Smith acknowledges you don't see that in people.
And that's just beyond, watchmaking. That's generally speaking, people have, don't have that dedication.
It takes 10 years to become a dentist or something, like.
Right. You get a PhD, an MD. I mean,
it's discipline, isn't it? It's discipline.
It is discipline, and it's tenacity, and it's focus. And it was a huge, listen, making the film, I encountered a lot of hurdles. It like I said, it's very difficult. But like Roger Smith was a huge inspiration. When I came across a stumbling block while making the film, all I had to do was think of Roger Smith and his story. I mean, surely, if Roger Smith can spend 10 years dedication to his craft, then surely I can persevere, in making the film. Listen, it's an independent film. He makes independent watches. These are independent things. And so I think there's a lot of crossover in that sense of that, if you want to make a film, if you want to make a watch, you have to have the drive, the focus, and the tenacity to see it through.
And this is what I find really interesting, Michael, is that sort of the whole concept of the film, to me anyway, was, around like how you spend your time and to, really be precious with it and, enjoy it. And at the same time, we're praising people that have dedicated 10 years of hard work and discipline, doing something independently with no guaranteed upside, with no guarantee that it's gonna pay off or work out. Like that's a huge chunk of your life to spend working towards something that's so uncertain. And it's the same for this documentary, right? Like as you just said, 4 years, you had to put your own money up. You had to, it takes you away from other things as well. So there's this huge opportunity cost. What was it like going through a 4-year process where it's, you're working on something purely out of passion, doing it independently, not knowing that, it's going to even work whilst you're exploring the concept of using, of how precious time itself actually is?
Well, I think, being naive is a huge benefit. I had never made a film before. I had edited films. I kind of just figured that, being an editor, all I had to do was really produce and make raw material. If I could have raw material, then I knew I could edit it. So that's sort of how I went about it. But everything in making listen, I didn't think it was going to take 4 years. I thought it would take like 2 years, maybe at the most. But there's, like I said, I started out, shooting interviews with my own money, we did a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter itself, I was so naive about. I was like, oh, I'll just make a few tote bags and, throw them up on the Kickstarter site, and I'll gross $150,000. Well, it turns out that's not how it works. You have to. It's a project unto itself, but it did work out. You just, and then I had to, after we filmed, I had to edit it. I didn't pay myself to edit the film. I had to take a break at a certain point and pick up a editing job, because I do have a family and they do need to eat. And so, and then it just, it took a long time. The editing process, which I think is good, to spend, what was good about all of this and being able to take my time with it was certain things happened in the editing room that were unexpected. And I don't think those things would have happened if I was like on a super tight deadline or if I was rushing through it. For example, the film ultimately is a tribute to my father, who passed away about 11 years ago, totally unexpectedly. And that was not an original idea of mine starting the film. That's something that came about while I was editing the film.
Obviously, this is potentially a tricky question for you to answer, but you've spoken to, I think the greats in a lot of ways, and you've got inclusion and the best voices in there at the moment. Are there people that you either approached or that you would have liked to approach that you didn't, or maybe did speak to, but weren't able to weave into this particular story?
One of the things that I wished I was able to do was go to Japan and profile a Japanese independent watchmaker. The film is very European centric, which makes sense, but I would have liked to profile a Japanese independent. I just didn't have the resources to go to Japan.
Yeah, especially given how sort of, pivotal Japan has been to that, independent watchmaking movement. I think that's
part two.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to ask. This is a particular story around watches, and it's a very big story about watchmaking and time, but there's other tales you could tell in this space. Is there anything that you were sort of tempted to sort of a rabbit hole you really wanted to go down, or would you, sort of follow this up with another story in the same world?
Well, I'm still super passionate about watches and mechanical timekeeping and horology. And I do want to make another film, if not more than one other film. And I think if I were to make another film about watches and watchmaking, I think I really would focus on one single independent watchmaker for the entire film. And I think that would be, again, one of these wonderful Japanese independent watchmakers. I'd have to find the right person with the interesting story beyond the watches, but that would really interest me to commit a whole film to one watchmaker in Japan.
Fantastic. Well, Felix and I have had the pleasure of catching an early screening. But Michael, how can people watch the film? How can they support you? How can they learn more?
The world premiere of Keeper of Time is on April 28th. It's in New York City at the SVA Theater. And obviously not everybody can be in New York City to attend the world premiere, but we're making it available for a live stream. And also the following day, the 29th, we're doing 4 replays of the world premiere for the rest of the world, time zones that will be people will accommodate other time zones. Excuse me. The live stream premiere is going to be great because it's not just the film, but there's this wonderful Q&A afterwards that's being moderated by Jack Forrester, editor-in-chief of Hodinkee. Panels include Ben Clymer, who's in the film, Gary Steingart, who's in the film, William Messina, who's in the film, and executive producer, William Andrews, who's a sundial maker and in the film, Brittany Nicole Cox, who we've spoken about, will be on the panel as well, and Michael Friedman, head of complications of Audemars Piguet, who is the historian in the film. So it's a wonderful panel. And so people will be able to watch that live on the 28th, or again in the replays on the 29th. And to buy tickets to all of these events, you just need to go to keeperoftimemovie.com, the film's website, and you can purchase tickets there.
Now, Michael, you were mentioning something about William Messina, former OT the Podcast alumni, by the way, that he's also added something else into the mix.
Yes, Messina Lab is sponsoring this exclusive watch giveaway. So they are donating a Unimatic Messina Lab collaboration, a U1 MLBN 9 dive watch. But this watch is extra special in that it's a limited edition watch, one of 80 that were made, and it was only made exclusively for friends and family of Messina Lab. So you can't purchase this watch. It's very special. And all you have to do to enter to win a chance is to go to keeperoftimemovie.com and buy a ticket either to the in-person screening in New York or a virtual ticket for the live stream or one of the replays, and you're automatically entered.
Awesome.
And you can watch it later as well, right? You can catch it later on Vimeo.
Yes. So on May 1st, the film will be available for digital purchase on Vimeo. But again, you will be able to go to keeperoftimemovie.com to purchase the film digitally there and watch it at your leisure. But it won't include the Q&A, and it unfortunately will not enter you to win that fantastic watch.
Understood. So do not waste any time. I think by when this is publishing, it's slightly before the premiere or around the time. So if you've missed the premiere, you can certainly watch the replay still. So make sure you check out the show notes to have that happen. But Michael, one last question, and one that we ask most people that we speak to. Do you have a recommendation for us? And for you, I think I'd like to keep it. This is something not related to watches, something related to film. Are there any other sort of, maybe a similar film in approach, but maybe dealing with a different topic, or just something you've been enjoying recently?
I just watched this film on the Criterion Channel. It's called No Man's Land, and I think it was made in the mid-90s, maybe early 2000s. But it was an incredible film about the Bosnian War, Serbian War. And I highly recommend it, especially what's going on with Ukraine right now and Russia invading. It was just a really well done film, and really explores of the absurdity of it all and war. And so that film affected me, and I highly recommend it.
Nice. We'll find that and we'll put it in the notes as well.
Fantastic, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll link up keeperoftimemovie.com as well, and everyone, we highly recommend watching it. It was really good 90 minutes of entertainment. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. It was fun.
Andy, fascinating chat there with Michael Sulba, director of Keeper of Time. Incredible film. Like, it's really, really beautiful.
Good.
For me, this is the sort of thing that I will send to people that are like, oh, you're into watches. What's with that? Instead of having that sort of chat that sort of, can go well or poorly, depending on, say, hey, here's 90 minutes of your time. This is why I like watches. And, nothing like Philippe Dufour hand polishing a screw sink to get why this is sort of, air quotes, a thing.
Yeah, and I think this almost transcends, watchmaking as well. Like, it really is about exploring the concept of time and what it actually means. It's just 100%. Good content. Like, it's a good 90-minute documentary. I would be shocked if this isn't on a major streaming platform.
Really?
On a pop. Yeah, think about it. It's very well done. It's very interesting. Okay. It's really engaging as well, which in 2022 is quite hard.
Yeah, I reckon we'll see I reckon there'll be NPR interviews or like Roman Mars or
Yep.
someone like that. I'll chat to them. Anyway, thank you so much, Michael, for chatting to us. That's great. We'll definitely, want to see part 2. I'm hoping there's going to be some sort of follow-up to this. I think he's onto a winner. Thank you also to Breitling, of course, for sponsoring the show. Check out the Navitimer again. BreitlingWatches.com, I believe. Is that the website? Anyway, you know how to do it.
Breitling.com.
Yeah, sure.
Google Breitling, it'll come up. If you want to email us, otthepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Instagram, ot.podcast. Of course, 5-star reviews, subscribing, tagging us on Instagram posts, etc., Felix.
Yeah, and if you've got a pink dialed Anordain and you're listening to this, actually do it. Send us a message or something. And,
we want to see it.
And share us and tell us what you think and all that. Maybe we'll do a little some sort of follow-up episode or something about,
Yes, we'll have to. All right, next week we will see you then.
Tschüss.